Fresh mop water streaks reflect blood red under hallway lights. These stories come from actual reports and written accounts gathered from workers who should have been alone. When you take a job after dark, routine becomes a risk and help can be miles away. What happens when something walks the empty places with you, imitating real danger? Tonight, we follow 4 true accounts where routine shifts turned threatening, each raising questions no ordinary procedure can answer. Listen closely, details are easy to miss when the lights flicker. The janitor's extra shift.
I had been mopping floors at Meridian Medical Center for 3 years when I found the footprints. Every Tuesday through Saturday, from 11 at night until 7 in the morning, I worked alone in the 12-story building. The doctors, nurses, and office staff went home. The security guard made his rounds from the lobby. I knew every stain, every scuff mark, every shadow in those hallways. On the night of October 15th, I started my rounds on the 8th floor as usual. Ophthalmology and cardiology offices lined the corridor, their glass doors reflecting my cart's yellow lights. I had just finished mopping near the elevator bank when I saw them. Wet footprints led from the elevator toward the emergency stairwell. It was not water, something darker. I knelt down with my flashlight and felt my stomach drop. The prints were fresh, still tacky to the touch, and unmistakably blood. I pulled out my radio to call Marcus, the security guard downstairs. Static answered me. I tried again, pressing the button firmly. Nothing but white noise filled the empty hallway. The building's cell service had always been spotty, but the radios worked everywhere. The footprints measured about size 10, bare feet with clear toe impressions. They moved in a straight line toward the stairwell, leaving small pools between each step. Whoever had made them was bleeding heavily from their feet, yet I heard no sounds of distress, no calls for help echoing in the building. I followed the trail to the stairwell door and found it propped open with a surgical towel, one of the blue ones the medical offices used. The blood trail continued down the concrete steps, disappearing into the darkness below. My hand trembled as I reached for my phone to call 911. No signal. The screen showed full bars, but every call failed immediately. I tried the landline in Dr. Patterson's office, using my master key to get inside. The phone was dead, no dial tone at all. Someone had cut the main line in the building. I needed to get to Marcus downstairs, but the blood trail led directly toward the lobby. The elevator felt like a trap, too small, too slow, too easy to stop between floors. I decided to take the west stairwell, the one maintenance staff used, hoping to circle around whoever had left the prints. On the 6th floor, I found the second trail. Fresh footprints, identical in size and spacing, led from the west stairwell toward the pediatric wing. But these prints were going up the hallway, while the first set had gone down. The blood was still wet, still warm when I touched the edge of one print. 2 trails meant 2 people, or one person moving impossibly fast between locations. I grabbed a scalpel from Dr. Morrison's office and slipped it into my pocket. The building felt different. Now the familiar creaks and hums had become threatening sounds, and shadows seemed to shift just beyond my peripheral vision. I tried the staff elevator to reach Marcus faster. The button lit up, the doors opened, but when I pressed L for lobby, nothing happened. The elevator climbed instead, stopping at the 10th floor with a soft chime. The doors opened to reveal a 3rd blood trail, this one leading toward the surgical suite. Someone was herding me upward, using the trails to control my movement through the building. I ran for the main stairwell, taking the steps 3 at a time, desperate to reach the lobby before whoever was creating these trails could block my final escape route. On the 4th floor landing, I heard footsteps above me, slow, deliberate steps that matched the spacing of the blood prints. I pressed myself against the concrete wall and listened. The steps stopped directly overhead, as if whoever was making them knew exactly where I stood. A drop of blood landed on my hand. Then another. I looked up to see fresh blood seeping between the metal stairs above me, forming droplets that fell in steady rhythm. The person was standing right there, maybe 20 feet above my head, bleeding through the stairwell grating. I held my breath and counted to 30. The footsteps resumed, moving away from the railing, heading toward the 5th floor exit. I had maybe 60 seconds to reach the lobby before they could intercept me. I ran down the remaining flights, my work boots echoing off the concrete walls. The lobby was empty. Marcus's security desk sat unattended, his coffee still warm, his jacket draped over the back of his chair. The main doors were locked from the inside, with a key I did not have. I was trapped with someone who had already been in the building when I arrived. I found Marcus in the basement storage room. He was unconscious, but breathing, a small cut on the back of his head, his radio and keys missing. Someone had taken his access to lock me in and cut off my communication. This was planned, deliberate, and I was the target. The blood trails made sense now. Someone had injured themselves to create the footprints, using them to map my movements, to learn my routines and responses. They had studied how I worked, where I went, how I reacted to problems in the building. I dragged Marcus to the main elevator and used his override key to send him up to the lobby, then programmed the elevator to stay there with the doors open. If anyone came looking in the morning, they would find him immediately. Now I had to survive until sunrise. The basement had no windows, but it connected to the parking garage through a service tunnel. I could break the emergency exit glass, trigger the alarm, and hope someone would respond even if the phones were down. But that meant crossing 50 meters of open garage where anyone could be waiting. I made my choice at 20 minutes past 4 in the morning. I broke the glass, grabbed the incident report forms from Marcus's desk, and wrote down everything I could remember while the alarm blared overhead. Whatever happened next, there would be a record of what I had found. The paramedics arrived first, then police, then building management. Marcus recovered fully and remembered nothing after starting his midnight rounds. The security cameras showed empty hallways all night. Every angle where the blood trails appeared showed clean floors in the footage. I filled out 6 pages of incident reports, documenting every detail I could recall. The investigating officer took my statement and assured me they would dust for prints, test the blood samples, and review all security footage from that night. 3 days later, I received a copy of my filed report from the building's insurance company. The document contained my signature and badge number, but the incident description had changed. According to the form, I had reported a water leak on the 8th floor and a burned-out light bulb in the west stairwell. The blood evidence never made it to the lab. The security office claimed their footage showed a quiet night with no unusual activity. Marcus returned to work and mentioned casually that he sometimes dozed off during the boring midnight hours. I kept working at Meridian Medical Center for 2 more months, but I never worked alone again. The building felt different, as if someone was always watching, always one step ahead of my routine. I requested transfers twice before finally taking a job at a smaller clinic across town. Last week, I drove past the medical center and noticed they were hiring a new night janitor. The job posting specified Tuesday through Saturday, 11 at night until 7 in the morning, working alone in the 12-story building. The same shift I used to work. I still have the pen I used to write that incident report. Every few days, I find it moved to a different place in my apartment, always positioned near a blank piece of paper, as if someone wants me to keep writing.
A report half-filled, a memory that refuses to match the records when the paperwork does not align. The next shift proves how missing hours and malfunctioning equipment can erase the truth. Now, a silent customer lingers just outside, and the surveillance tapes are not your only worry. The gas station customer that wouldn't leave.
I took the graveyard shift at Miller's Gas because nobody else wanted it. For 3 years, I ran the place solo from 11 at night until 7 in the morning, watching truck drivers fuel up and insomniacs buy energy drinks. The job suited me fine with decent pay, quiet hours, and enough solitude to think through the divorce papers I had been avoiding. What I did not expect was how the isolation would start eating at me, or how a single customer could turn my safe little bubble into something I still cannot fully explain. It was just past midnight on a Tuesday when I first noticed the sedan parked at Pump 3. It was a silver 4-door, maybe 10 years old, nothing remarkable except for how still it sat. The driver had not gotten out, had not moved at all from what I could see through the security monitor. I figured they were taking a call or checking directions, so I went back to restocking the cigarette display behind the counter. 20 minutes later, the car was still there. It was in the same position, engine running, headlights cutting through the October fog that had started rolling in from the fields. I squinted at the grainy black and white feed from camera 2, trying to make out the driver's silhouette. The figure looked slumped forward slightly, hands on the wheel, but completely motionless. A chill ran down my spine as I realized I had not seen them move once. I grabbed the radio to call dispatch, following protocol for suspicious activity. The handset crackled with static, then went silent. I tried again, adjusting the frequency dial the way Marcus had shown me during training. Nothing but white noise and occasional bursts of what sounded like backward speech. The landline was our backup, but when I picked up the receiver, there was no dial tone, just a low humming that seemed to vibrate in my chest. The customer sat there for another hour. I found myself checking the monitor every few minutes, each time hoping to see taillights disappearing down Route 47. Instead, the sedan remained frozen in place, its occupant unnaturally still. I started timing the intervals between my glances, counting seconds to prove to myself that real time was passing. 60 Mississippi, 120 Mississippi, 300 Mississippi. The car never moved. Around 2:30 in the morning, I made my first mistake. Standard protocol said to stay locked inside after midnight unless a customer needed assistance, but my nerves were getting the better of me. I thought about calling the police, but without working communication, I would have to drive to the station 15 miles away and abandon my post. Instead, I decided to get a better look through the reinforced glass door. The fog had thickened, turning the parking lot into a gray soup punctuated by the harsh glow of sodium lights. I could barely make out the sedan's outline, but something about its position seemed wrong. It looked closer to the building than before, maybe by a few feet. I told myself I was imagining things, that the fog was playing tricks with perspective. But when I checked the security monitor, camera 2 showed the same wide shot as always, the car at Pump 3, exactly where it had been all night. I started keeping a written log, noting the time every 10 minutes and describing what I saw. 2:45 in the morning. Sedan at Pump 3, no movement. 2:55 in the morning. Sedan appears closer, fog heavy. 3:05 in the morning. Checked monitor, car at original position. The discrepancy between what I saw through the window and what the camera showed was making my hands shake. Either the monitor was malfunctioning, or my eyes were lying to me. By 3:30, I could not ignore what was happening. Each time I looked through the door, the sedan had edged closer to the building. Not dramatically, just a few feet each time, like someone was playing a slow-motion game of red light, green light. But the security feed consistently showed it parked at the pump, never moving. I grabbed a flashlight from the emergency kit and aimed it through the glass, trying to cut through the fog. The beam illuminated the car's rear bumper, no more than 20 feet from the entrance. My heart hammered against my ribs as I realized the vehicle had crossed half the parking lot while remaining apparently stationary on camera. I could see the license plate now, or where it should have been. The mounting bracket was there, but the plate itself was just a black rectangle, like a hole cut out of reality. I retreated to the counter, my mouth dry as cotton. The logical part of my brain kept insisting there had to be an explanation. Faulty camera angle, atmospheric distortion, sleep deprivation playing tricks. But the primitive part, the part that still knew how to recognize a predator, was screaming at me to run. I checked my watch 4 hours until my replacement arrived. 4 hours felt like a lifetime. Around 4 in the morning, the sedan's headlights went out. The sudden darkness beyond the windows was absolute, pressing against the glass like a living thing. I could not see the car anymore, could not even tell if it was still there. A security monitor showed nothing but static where camera 2's feed should have been. Camera 1, covering the interior, flickered occasionally, but seemed to be working. Camera 3, aimed at the road, showed empty asphalt stretching into the fog. That is when I heard the first tap on the window. 3 deliberate knocks on the reinforced glass near the door. I froze behind the counter, flashlight clutched in my sweaty palm. The sound came again, tap, 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 rhythmic and patient. I forced myself to look toward the entrance, but the fog outside was too thick to see through. The tapping moved along the windows, circling the building slowly. I tried the radio again, desperate for any connection to the outside world. The static had changed, forming patterns that almost sounded like voices. I thought I heard my name mixed in with the white noise, but when I listened closely, there was nothing but electronic hiss. The landline was still dead, humming with that same low frequency that seemed to burrow into my bones. The tapping stopped. In the sudden silence, I could hear my own breathing, ragged and too fast. I counted to 60, then slowly approached the window with my flashlight ready. The beam cut through the fog, but revealed nothing, no car, no figure, no evidence that anyone had been there at all. The parking lot looked empty, except for my own truck parked near the employee entrance. I checked the security monitor and felt my blood turn to ice water. Camera 2 was working again, showing a clear view of pump 3. The sedan was back in its original position, headlights on, engine running. The driver sat motionless behind the wheel, exactly as they had been 8 hours earlier. According to the timestamp in the corner, it was 11:57 at night. My shift had just begun. I stared at the timestamp, willing it to change, to advance to the correct time. But the numbers stayed frozen at 11:57, 58, 59, then flipped back to 11:57 again. The clock on the wall showed 4:23 in the morning. My watch agreed. But the security system insisted I had just arrived for work, that the entire night had been erased. My hands shook as I grabbed a pen and wrote down what I remembered. The sedan, the fog, the tapping, the missing time. The words looked thin and insufficient on paper, like trying to capture a nightmare with a grocery list. But I had to document everything before it faded or got worse. I had to prove to myself that it had really happened. The rest of my shift passed in a blur of paranoid glances at the monitor and desperate attempts to contact the outside world. The sedan remained at pump 3, its driver never moving, never leaving. When Marcus arrived at 7, he found me hunched over the counter with pages of notes and a security system showing 12 hours of looped footage starting at 11:57 at night. I tried to explain what had happened, but the words sounded crazy even to me. Marcus listened politely while reviewing the tapes, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. According to the timestamp, nothing unusual had occurred during my shift. The sedan had arrived at 11:57 and remained parked until 12:32 in the morning, when it left normally. The driver had never approached the building. But when Marcus played back the footage of the sedan's departure, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The figure getting out to pump gas moved wrong, too smooth, too fluid, like someone pulling puppet strings. And when they turned toward the camera for just a moment, Their face was a blur of static, a void where features should have been. I quit that morning. I told Marcus I was having health issues, that the night shift was not working for me anymore. He was understanding, even helped me clean out my locker and said I could use him as a reference. The security tapes went to regional headquarters as part of the standard monthly report, along with my written incident log and a formal statement about the equipment malfunctions. 3 weeks later, I got a call from a regional manager asking about discrepancies in the surveillance footage. The timestamp showed a 7-hour gap on the night I had reported the incident, just empty static from midnight to 7 in the morning. But buried in the digital file, they had found 30 seconds of clear video that did not match any timestamp at all. It showed me standing at the front window, shining a flashlight into empty air and talking to no one. The manager asked if I had been under any unusual stress, if there were personal factors that might have affected my judgment. I told him about the divorce, the sleepless nights, the isolation. He made sympathetic noises and assured me that night shift work could play tricks on anyone's mind. The official report would list equipment malfunction and operator fatigue as the causes of the incident. I never went back to Miller's Gas, but sometimes I drive past it on my way to my new job in town. The night shift position stayed vacant for months before they finally found someone willing to take it. A college kid named Jeremy, who needed the money for tuition. I thought about warning him, but what would I say? That time moves differently there? That some customers never really leave? Last week, I saw Jeremy at the grocery store. He looked tired, jumpy, like someone who was not sleeping well. When I asked how the job was going, he just shrugged and said it was quiet. Too quiet, sometimes. Then he mentioned that they had upgraded the security system, installed new cameras with better timestamps. He seemed relieved about that, like accurate time was something you could not take for granted. I wished him luck and walked away, fighting the urge to tell him my story. But as I reached my car, I heard him call out behind me. "Hey," he said, jogging to catch up. "You would not happen to know anything about a silver sedan, would you? 4-door, maybe 10 years old?" I told him I did not, but my hands were shaking as I drove away. Sometimes I wonder if the surveillance tapes from that night are still sitting in some regional office, filed away with dozens of other unexplained incidents. Sometimes I wonder if that 30 seconds of footage showing me talking to empty air was really empty at all. But mostly, I try not to think about the timestamp that kept resetting, or the 7 hours of my life that officially never happened. 3 months later, Jeremy quit Miller's Gas without notice. The position has been vacant ever since.
A vacant post time unaccounted for, and memory that glides quietly into night. Urban routine and mechanical voices start to blur as familiar tunnels become unpredictable. Sometimes, the voice you trust is not your own. Last train from Midtown.
I pull the last train of the night from Midtown Central at 11:47. 23 years driving these tunnels, and I still check the mirrors twice before closing the doors. Tonight feels different, though. Empty platforms carry their own weight, but this one feels watched. The radio crackles as we pass 34th Street. 729, we have a maintenance worker on the tracks at 23rd. Hold at the station. I ease the brakes, wondering why anyone would be down there this late. Union rules are clear about after-hours work. Through the front window, I spot the figure in the tunnel mouth. Orange vest, hard hat, regulation reflective stripes. Something is familiar about the way she moves, checking the rails with careful steps. When she turns toward my headlight, I recognize Maria Santos from the day shift crew. "Control, this is 729. The worker down there is Maria Santos. I thought she transferred to Brooklyn last month." Static answers me. I try again, but the radio stays quiet. Maria waves me forward with the standard all-clear signal. As we roll past her position, I lean toward the side window. Maria looks up, and for a moment our eyes meet. She smiles and nods, but something is wrong with her face. The proportions do not quite match what I remember. Too wide maybe, or too pale under the work lights. At 23rd, nobody should board. The platform has been closed for renovation since Tuesday. But someone is waiting by the center doors, a woman in a conductor's uniform I do not recognize. She taps her badge against the reader, and the doors open with their familiar hiss. I should stop her, should ask for identification, but she is already aboard and moving toward the passenger cars. Her badge worked, which means she is in the system. Maybe she is covering someone's shift. Maybe she is new. I tell myself these things as we pull away from the platform. The few passengers I am carrying tonight start acting strange around Union Square. Mrs. Chen, who rides my line every Tuesday, gets up and moves to a different seat. Then moves again. A college kid with headphones starts talking to his reflection in the window, having what sounds like an argument. Next stop, 14th Street, I announce, but my voice sounds off over the intercom, too bright, too cheerful for this late hour. I do not remember making the announcement that way. Through the rear-view monitor, I watch the woman in the conductor's uniform walking from car to car. By Canal Street, Mrs. Chen is standing at the doors, staring at her own reflection with her head tilted as if she is listening to something. The college kid has taken off his headphones and is pressing his ear to the window. Even the businessman reading his paper has stopped, his eyes following something I cannot see. Brooklyn Bridge City Hall, last stop. But I did not say that. The words came from the intercom in my voice, but my mouth never opened. I reach for the microphone, but it is exactly where I left it in the cradle. The announcement repeats, Brooklyn Bridge City Hall, last stop. The woman in the conductor's uniform appears in my peripheral vision, standing just outside the operator's cab. Her badge reads Santos M in the same font as mine, but Maria Santos is a track maintenance worker, not a conductor. And she is definitely not someone who should be on my train after midnight. I lock the cab door from the inside, but she is not trying the handle. She is just standing there, watching me through the reinforced glass. When I look directly at her, she raises her radio to her mouth. My radio crackles in response, but she has not spoken yet. Control, 729 requesting security at Brooklyn Bridge. Unauthorized personnel on board. I wait for acknowledgement, but instead, I hear my own voice from her radio. All clear, Control. Routine run. No incidents to report. I never said those words. The train pulls into Brooklyn Bridge with its usual mechanical precision, but the platform lights seem dimmer than usual. My passengers file off in single formation, moving as if they are sleepwalking. Mrs. Chen pauses at the doors and looks back at me with someone else's expression entirely. The conductor woman follows the passengers onto the platform, but instead of walking toward the exit, she moves along the train toward the front. I can see her through the station windows, getting closer to my position with each step. Her radio is still pressed to her mouth. I pull the train toward the yard, following protocols I have repeated thousands of times. But in my mirrors, I can see someone still standing on the platform, the same orange vest and hard hat from the tunnel. Maria Santos, or whoever was wearing her face, is watching my train disappear into the darkness. Back at the depot, I file my incident report and submit the audio log from tonight's run. The log shows my last official communication at 11:53, requesting information about the track worker. After that, nothing but dead air until end of shift. Supervisor Martinez reviews the recording with me the next afternoon. Clean run, he says, fast-forwarding through the audio. No incidents, no delays. Santos did good work keeping the line clear. But I never reported Santos clearing anything. He plays back the section where I supposedly gave the all clear to Control. It is definitely my voice, calm and professional. Routine run, no incidents to report. The timestamp shows I said this at 12:07, but I remember being locked in my cab, watching the woman with Santos's badge. Must have been a radio glitch earlier, Martinez explains, closing my file. Your voice came through fine on the official log. Good work keeping things smooth. He hands me next week's schedule, and I notice my name listed for the same Tuesday night run. I drive home through streets that seem too quiet, checking my rearview mirror more than usual. At every red light, I find myself studying my reflection, making sure it moves when I do. The radio in my car stays off. I do not want to hear my own voice saying things I never said. That night, I dream about orange vests and conductor badges, about passengers who move in formation, and voices that belong to me but speak someone else's words. I wake up checking my reflection, tilting my head as Mrs. Chen did on the train. 3 weeks later, I am assigned to the morning route. Daylight shifts with full crews and busy platforms. The nighttime runs go to newer drivers, people who do not ask questions about familiar faces in unfamiliar places. I tell myself this is better, safer. But sometimes, riding the subway as a passenger, I hear announcements in voices I recognize. Professional, calm, routine words that sound exactly right. And I wonder if the drivers making those announcements remember saying them, or if they are hearing their own voices for the very first time, speaking words that someone else has chosen for them to say.
Voices repeat, memories falter, and announcements play on without their source. As our final story begins, a distant plea for help spirals beyond radio range, leaving evidence in handwriting that does not belong to anyone left in the room. No caller on the board.
The night shift at Millfield Emergency Services always felt like watching over a sleeping town. I had been dispatching for 3 years, long enough to know every street name and recognize most callers by voice. The center housed just 4 workstations, though only 2 operated during overnight hours. Tonight, it was just me and the supervisor, Karen, who dozed in her office between calls. At 11:47, a call came through on line 2. The voice was a woman, maybe middle-aged, speaking in sharp bursts between what sounded like running footsteps. She said someone was chasing her through the park on Elm Street, that she could see him gaining ground. Her breathing was ragged and desperate. I asked for her location, and she said she was heading toward the bandstand. I pulled up the map system and began dispatching units, but the screen showed no active call record. The caller identification field remained blank, and the automatic location ping that should have appeared within seconds never materialized. I glanced at my call board. No lights, no indication that line 2 was even in use. Yet I could still hear her voice, clearer now, saying she could see a patrol car's headlights. Officer Martinez radioed that he had arrived at Elm Street Park and was conducting a sweep. There was no sign of anyone in distress. The woman's voice continued in my headset, thanking me, saying the officer was walking toward her. But Martinez reported the area was completely empty. I checked my equipment, wiggled cables, and rebooted the phone system. The voice had stopped. Karen emerged from her office, asking why I had dispatched units without logging the call. I showed her my screen, still no record of any incoming call in the past hour. She pulled the audio recordings from the server, but the timestamp showed only dead air during the exact minutes I had heard the woman's voice. Karen suggested I take a short break and get some coffee. When I returned to my station, I noticed something odd through the windows facing the parking lot. A woman in a light-colored jacket stood near the chain-link fence at the property's edge. She appeared to be looking directly at our building. Karen was back in her office, and I did not want to sound paranoid after the phantom call incident. The woman remained motionless for nearly 20 minutes. When the next legitimate call came in, a minor traffic accident, I handled it normally, but kept glancing toward the windows. During the call, I realized I could no longer see the woman. The area by the fence was empty, though the parking lot lights provided clear visibility. Just after 1 a.m, I saw her again. This time she stood closer, maybe 30 feet from the building, still wearing that same pale jacket. Her posture seemed wrong somehow, too rigid, like she was standing at attention. I decided to check with Karen, but found her office empty. Her coffee cup was still warm. I tried calling Karen's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. The building's security cameras fed to a monitor near my workstation, and I cycled through the exterior views. The woman appeared on camera 3, positioned exactly where I had seen her through the window. But when I looked up from the monitor, she was gone from the window view. A genuine emergency call interrupted my growing unease. A house fire on Maple Avenue. I dispatched fire and rescue units, coordinating with the incident commander as crews arrived on scene. For 30 minutes, I was too busy to think about missing supervisors or mysterious women in parking lots. The fire was contained with minimal damage. When the incident wrapped up, I noticed Karen had returned to her office. I could see her silhouette through the frosted glass, apparently working at her desk. I decided not to mention the woman outside unless something else unusual happened. The remainder of my shift passed quietly, with only 2 minor calls. At 7 in the morning, day shift dispatcher Amy arrived to relieve me. I gave her a standard briefing on overnight activity, omitting the phantom call and the woman outside. Karen's office was empty again, though her car remained in the parking lot. Amy said she would handle the supervisor transition when Karen returned. I completed my incident log as required, documenting all dispatched calls and their outcomes. The phantom call posed a dilemma. Technically, nothing had happened, yet I had dispatched units based on what I heard. I wrote a brief note about a possible equipment malfunction that had resolved itself during system reboot. 3 days later, Amy mentioned that Karen had taken unexpected leave and would be out for several weeks. A temporary supervisor was being assigned from the county office. Amy also asked if I knew anything about the final line in my incident log from that night. Apparently, someone had added a note at the bottom. I retrieved my log from the files, and there it was, my normal entries in blue ink, ending with my signature. But below that, in different handwriting, and what appeared to be pencil, someone had written, "Subject contacted dispatch successfully. Response time adequate. Case closed." I had never seen those words before, and I was certain I had not written them. The temporary supervisor reviewed the log and asked routine questions about the notation. I explained that I had not added the final line, but she seemed more concerned with getting up to speed on current procedures than investigating old paperwork. The county office filed the incident report without further comment. Karen never returned to work. Human Resources said she had requested a transfer to a different county, effective immediately. Her replacement found no unusual equipment problems with our phone system, and the audio server showed no gaps or anomalies from that night. 2 weeks later, I was working another night shift when I received a thank you card in the internal mail. It was addressed to me personally, with no return address. Inside, in that same pencil handwriting, someone had written, "Your quick response that night probably saved my life. The officer found me just in time." The card was signed, "A Grateful Caller," but I recognized something about the handwriting. I compared the card to my old incident log. The script was identical, the same careful formation of letters, the same slight slant, but I had written that log myself, in blue ink, and I knew I had not added the final notation. Someone else had access to my paperwork, someone who knew details about a call that officially never happened. The card sits in my desk drawer now, and I find myself checking it occasionally, making sure the words have not changed. Sometimes, during quiet nights, I wonder if Karen saw the same woman outside, if she heard the same phantom calls. But the new supervisor keeps stricter oversight, and I have learned to document only what the system can verify. Last month, Amy mentioned seeing someone in a light jacket near the parking lot fence during her evening shift. She said the person seemed to be watching the building, but when she looked again a few minutes later, no one was there. Amy asked if I had ever noticed anything similar during my overnight shifts. I told her that the lighting outside can create shadows that look like people, but recommended she mention it to the supervisor if it happened again. Yesterday, I found another notation in my current incident log, added in that same careful pencil script. "Ongoing monitoring continues. Frequency as needed." I had signed off on the log just hours earlier, and I was certain those words were not there before. The new supervisor has not mentioned the addition, and I have not brought it to her attention. Some conversations, I have learned, are better left unstarted.
After dark, even simple jobs can turn on us, exposing cracks in what we trust to be real. Each story leaves us with more questions than answers, just beneath the surface of our routine. If you want the next drop of procedural dread, subscribe now. New accounts land here before the lights come up. Leave a comment below. What is the most unsettling thing you've noticed alone at work? Until next time, check your logs and mind to silence.